Getting the best value for money when it comes to PC gaming is going to come down to two things. And the first is, are you willing to buy some used PC parts? And the second thing is, are you willing to clean them up? And if the answer to both of those is yes, then today's video may be of some help to you. Where we've got here a PC with an i5 as well as a GTX 1060 6GB. And we got this for under $200 on a used PC parts hunt that we do here on the channel every month. And what we saw here with this PC was that it actually booted up when I bought it. It looked like it had no problems. But as we can see with some of the video footage that I'm showing you guys on the screen here, it's got dust and dirt buildup everywhere. And looking at the cable management, the only way I have to describe this is maybe a jungle sandwich. So let's get our hands dirty, and then after we've fixed this thing up, we'll see if we come into any problems, we'll tune it up, then we'll finally install Baldur's Gate 3, as well as some other games that I play regularly here at Tech Yes City.
If you want to get Windows 10 Pro activated for as little as $15 or Windows 11 Pro for as little as $21, then today's video sponsor SCD Keys has you covered. Use that coupon code BFTYC for a big 30% discount and the link in the description below.
So looking at this build, we're going to start pulling all the pieces apart individually. You may notice here there is mismatched sticks of memory, and generally you do not want this, because it's going to give you less performance than just having a matched pair, or even if they're not the same memory sticks, just having them in the proper configuration. So generally you just don't want 3 sticks of memory in your PC unless you're using a special type of older system, say for instance X58, which has triple channel memory. So this one right here is dual channel, so we generally want 2 or 4 sticks of memory in this PC right here. So we're gonna see what we can do. Maybe we've got another stick that we can swap this 2 4s over for just one 8GB stick and still have 16GB of RAM, and that'll just help with the performance. So that's probably a big outlier as to maybe why someone who traded this PC in traded it in and they were getting really poor performance when it came to gaming. But yeah, let's start pulling the rest of this thing apart. So we've pulled out all these components individually, and that's just gonna make it much easier to clean. Here's our i5, and here's our 535 watt power supply. Odd number there, I've never seen that before. But we've got here the fans, they're also really dirty. So doing this is just gonna make it so that everything is just much easier to clean, and it actually will save us time, I believe, over this whole build. But also you may notice this front panel here has got sticky tape, and that's because the person beforehand must have just manually ripped it all off to install their fans, when all they had to do was just take the front panel off down from the bottom. Anyhow, we're gonna glue that back on after we clean it up. So let's get straight into all of it. So we just finished cleaning all the hardware components that are going to be going back in this build. However, there were two pretty concerning parts here, and that was the GPU and the CPU. They had some really hard built up thermal paste, and the only way I could get this off was with parts cleaner. Some other places in the world, this is known as brake cleaner, and this stuff is very acidic, but it will do a very good job since it's also got really high pressure when it bursts out. It'll do a really good job in getting off all that crap that's really built up. However, there is a drawback with it, and you do have to make sure it is all cleaned off. That's the parts cleaner itself, the brake cleaner, once you've finished using it. So for this, I usually have a air blower, the opposite to a vacuum cleaner, and it'll just push off. Like if I leave this on the parts, it'll just do a great job in just making sure all the stuff is just like poof off the edge of it. So after that, we then clean up all the other components with a combination of wet tissues and WD-40. In this case, in Japan, it's called CRC 556. This is the stuff I use here. And this is basically thermal grease. It's non-conductive, non-capacitive, so you don't have to worry about this being left on your components. It does a great job of cleaning, but the best thing about this stuff is if you've got a little bit left over on the parts, it just gives it such a new look shine. So all these components here are looking brand spanking new, and they've got fresh new thermal paste, as well as with the memory. I found two 4GB sticks of DDR4 around here. So we're gonna go with a 4x4 configuration for the memory, and hopefully that helps with performance. But there's one final component we have to clean up right now, and that is the case. It is so dirty. So we're gonna do this last. We're gonna clean this up, then we're gonna put this build back together. So now we're almost finished with this build. We've got everything back together. The cable management is just so much cleaner now. I think the biggest mistake the person beforehand made was that they had all the fan connectors running in the front of the build here. And since they had Molex connectors, really, whenever you see a fan with a Molex connector, it's generally just got one speed, and that is cheap. So we just connect them all together around the back, plug that into the power supply, and that just clears out a lot of clutter in the build right here. Now, there is another thing that we've got to do right now, and that's the front panel here, which was pulled off, and then they've clearly tried to put it back on with double-sided tape and super glue, but it's ended up coming off. That's probably the reason they traded in. The glass kept falling off, but we've cleaned up all the glass, and we're going to go with a proper forever solution. I think maybe the forever solution that they had beforehand was kind of like my ex-girlfriend, and you know, she said to me in the past, "Brian, I want to be with you forever." And I'm like, what does that even mean? Is that like forever plus torment? And so the next day, it broken up, and there's another guy. He's the next forever guy. So this is going to be actually on the other side of the fence. This is going to be a good forever. It's going to be a happy forever here with the silicon gun. So let's get this done. And so beforehand, I think the solution that the other guy had was the before example. So we're just going to put on some silicon here. Not a whole lot, just enough to not really get on the glass. And they had super glue remnants coming on the glass beforehand. So really just enough to make it sure it's all stuck, and then we're good to go from there. So this build should be finished. So let's stick this on and start booting her up and playing some games. So this gaming PC is now 100% working like it should be. And also on top of that, it's even got that new look shine now. But in order to get this to work, so we've got our games installed now, but in order to get to this state, it was actually quite frustrating in that we had to update the BIOS 2 times, because the first time we updated it, we had an issue with memory. Then the second time we updated it, I did a reflash to a beta BIOS because I was having problems with a UEFI install of Windows. And then I decided to try out the beta BIOS, and that seemed to have fixed the issue. So this MSI Z370 board's definitely given me some headaches thus far, but after we updated the BIOS twice, we then were able to tune our memory and then tune the PC up, and also raise the clock speeds of the CPU to 4 gigahertz with the i5-8400. And now we are in our first game here, Baldur's Gate 3. So we've got this interesting scene set up here where I found this place on the map where it's like this, I don't know, this guy here, he's gonna run for the hills soon, but basically you can get a fireball and we can benchmark this. So we're getting 80 FPS, the CPU is maxed, and this is at 100% GPU as well. So this seems to be a perfect combo for Baldur's Gate 3. And so with this scene, you essentially, all these mushrooms, they all start, once you ignite one, they just have a chain reaction of ignition. Okay, our FPS is dropping to like 20 to 30, even though the GPU is still maxed at 100%. The CPU is doing quite well. The GTX 1060, this is medium settings here. Medium settings at 1080p, so there's no upscaling as well. So this is the most strenuous scene I've actually seen on the GPU. CPU, I think, in Act 3 on this game, in the Baldur's Gate city. But usually you're going to get around 60 to 80 FPS in this game, depending on the scenes, with a GTX 1060, and the i5-8400 is actually doing extremely well. So this CPU is keeping up with this GPU, meaning if we wanted to even upgrade our GPU to say an RTX 2060 in the future, even maybe a 3060, this CPU would be a decent combo. So at least for Baldur's Gate 3. So let's continue on to the next game now. So next up here is Starfield, and this is on 1080p, no upscaling, low settings, and it's a 4K monitor, so it doesn't have full screen. But yeah, I mean, the game runs pretty bad, so what if I laser this guy? Okay, it's doing nothing. Laser limb. Nope, doing nothing. So the game is a good 30 FPS. I mean, what if we try turn on FSR2 quickly? See if that gives us any more FPS. FSR2, here we go. Okay. Nope, that did nothing. We're still 32. Yeah, so this game is going to be a GTX 1060 6GB 30 FPS affair if you want to play Starfield. You're going to get that nice cinematic experience on this game with this combo. So, I mean, I don't know, like, let's forget about Starfield. So the last game here is Fortnite, and I tried playing this game at 1080p medium first, and I initially saw some pretty high FPS, but then when it came to actual battles, it was dropping to like 30-ish FPS, and so I turned it down to 1080p low, still at 100% screen resolution, and this game was then playing really smooth 1080p 60 FPS. So the GTX 1060 is just cutting it for these competitive online games, at least with Fortnite, with the Unreal Engine 5 update. So I was kind of surprised to see the FPS actually this low though in this title, but even at 60 FPS, I can still compete in this game and have a bit of fun, even though I'd like the FPS to be a little bit higher. So overall, this PC, it's running fine, but let's go over now to a conclusion with this whole build. So this PC right here for $200, it ended up being actually pretty decent, especially for Baldur's Gate 3, probably the most exciting title I've played in a long time. That was getting great FPS, 1080p medium settings. Fortnite was running okay. Obviously, if you want to play like games Dota 2 and Valorant and stuff like that, this PC will play that easily. But then Starfield really struggled to the point where I'm not really going to mess around with that too much. I think if you want to play Starfield, you're going to literally need the recommended specs or even the minimum requirements that they're stating on that website. There's just no way around it, even if you tune your PC and try and get some settings working right. I mean, for some reason, FSR2 wasn't working properly when I turned that on. That was still giving out the same FPS. And the CPU, we saw the percentage usage there. That still had some headroom. So yeah, Starfield, that's basically the verdict out of this video, is Starfield needs a very powerful GPU to run that game. But what we saw here, getting to the finish line, this was one of those things where we got a PC, it was just abandoned, really. The person who traded it in, they would have had, I'm guessing, quite a few issues with maybe stuttering, especially with that DDR4 memory configuration. And I've tried this in the past. You get a lot of stuttering, you'll get lower FPS. It can be to the tune of sometimes even like 30% less FPS, just because you've got such a mismatched memory configuration. So I'm guessing they had that, they traded it in, upgraded their memory to 16 gigabytes. It was just horrible. Traded in, got a new PC. But that being said, the magic of used, they let someone else like me have that magic, and I can share that with you here today. And restoring this PC was just a lot of fun. I mean, it was actually quite a dirty PC. Cleaning up the CPU, GPU, all the insides, and then updating that BIOS and tuning everything, ended up in the end having a PC that works really well. So there it is, guys. If you're willing to get your hands dirty, you are going to get the best price performance that the used market has to offer. But even then, if you look at some of my parts hunts that I've done, I get really clean parts here in Japan. And even in Australia, when I do parts hunting, I'd say half the parts are really clean when the people sell them, and they're really good deals to begin with. So if you want to get into the used market and you don't want to get your hands dirty, then there's that choice as well. Just go maybe get a photo of the parts and see if they're really clean. Ask the seller if the parts are clean, and then you're good to go in that aspect as well. But here at Tech Yes City, it's anything goes, and the FPS certainly goes as well. So hope you guys enjoyed this one here today. If you have any questions or comments about today's build, then be sure to drop them in the comment section below. In terms of noise, there was just nothing. Like, we got the PC running in the Fortnite menu right now, and there's no noise when I was gaming, no noise at all. So the GPU's quiet, the fans here, they're quiet, these 4 case fans, but they barely push any air in and out of the case. So good old Sharkoon included pre-built fans. So that's something to be aware of if you're putting in, say, higher end parts like a K CPU, an i7 or i9, or Ryzen 7, Ryzen 9, and a higher end GPU. I'd definitely be changing out these case fans from the default Sharkoon ones, as they're barely pushing any air. It's actually one of the worst examples I've seen. Even though the blue LEDs look cool, this thing definitely has a bit more to be desired. But other than that, since it's a low powered build, it's absolutely fine. So
really impressed overall at the end result, and hope you guys enjoyed this one. Though do let us know if you have any questions or what you think of this PC in the comment section below. Love reading your thoughts and opinions, as always, just like this question of the day here, which comes from Experimental. I guess they put hyphens in their name there, but they're saying, honestly, I'm lost. I've tried CPU, new power supply, separate but identical motherboard, RAM, HDD, everything but the case at this point. Can it be the case? So this question came up on our how to diagnose and fix a faulty PC, and getting asked about the case. Can that cause issues with a PC working and not working properly? And the answer is yes. I've had this only one time before in the past. I've had it actually a couple of times where it was just the power button wouldn't work, so it was just so obvious. But in terms of a case giving you problems, say whilst you're gaming and turning off the build or giving you a blue screen, in this case I had one example where the USB ports ended up, for some reason, the soldering on the front panel at the top, the USB was soldered to like the power button. So if you inserted a USB stick, or even if you had a USB stick in there and it started transferring data and being recognized, it just turned the whole build off. And I was scratching my head. I thought we had a faulty motherboard until I just diagnosed every single part one by one, and it was indeed the case. So, all pun intended. So what you want to do in this case is just, again, all pun intended, take everything out and then just have your motherboard on a box or something like that, and then turn the build on, and then you can quickly diagnose if the case is at fault or not. And so you just have to short those power pins at the bottom, and you should be good to go, and see if that will help you. So it'll be no extra cost, it'll just be a bit of extra time, but hopefully that answers that question. And with that aside, I'll catch you guys in another tech video very soon. If you've stayed this far and you're enjoying the content, be sure to hit that like button. And if you want to see the videos as soon as they drop, be sure to hit that sub button, ring that bell, and I'll see you next time. Peace out for now. Bye.